Those of you who know the prayer can recite along. If you don't know, close your eyes, fold your hands, and take a 3 deep breaths. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So welcome all for this Gita Unplugged series. Doing a very quick recap. Chapter 1, Arjuna asked Krishna, my dear Krishna, my dear charioteer, please kindly bring my chariot between the armies. Krishna drove the chariot of Arjuna right in front of Dronacharya and Bhishma Pitamaha. Seeing them standing on the battlefield, realizing that they are his beloved great-grandfather and teacher, Arjuna became confused, bewildered, and he thought, what's the point of fighting the war if in case I'm going to fight with my own relatives? Even if I won the war, if I won the battle, at the end of the day, I lose it. Why? Because then I don't have anyone to enjoy the kingdom that I would have. Like this, he gave different reasons. Out of compassion, whom I enjoy destruction of family traditions, and fear of destruction of traditions. That's how the chapter 1 ended, and then chapter 2 started, where Arjuna gave one more reason for not fighting the war, where he said, my dear Lord, I don't know what to do, to fight or not fight. What is my dharma? I'm confused. Please guide me. And that's the point. Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna, who was his charioteer, who was his friend, as his spiritual master. Shishya Sayam Sadhimam Tvam Prapannam. And here gave an opportunity to Krishna to speak on some of the most profound truths of life. Krishna took this as an opportunity and he spoke to Arjuna. In the rest of the chapter, which is the second biggest chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 72 verses around, in that Krishna taught Arjuna 3 things. Actually, he summarized the whole essence of spiritual knowledge, but Arjuna wasn't clear. That led to the 3rd chapter. We will begin our journey in a short while. But he discussed 3 things, 3 subject matters in the 2nd chapter. The first subject matter was, I guess I can take you to the next slide only. This was our chapter, and so in the first 10 verses, Arjuna said, I surrender, I don't know what is right and wrong, please guide me. And the 3 truths are the things that Krishna taught. First thing he taught Arjuna was the foundation of spiritual wisdom, and that is, who are you, who am I? That's how that's a fundamental thing that we all need to know, and that's what begin with 11 to 30th verse. Knowing that I'm not the body but a spirit soul, that's the foundation of spiritual wisdom. Then it raises to a second question. What is the application of this spiritual wisdom? Which means, all right, I learned from Vedic sciences that I'm not this body but spirit soul. The obvious question is, how my tomorrow looks different than today? If I'm just not the body but a spirit soul, then Krishna speaks from 31 to 53rd verses about 2 responsibilities, 2 dharmas. Swadharma, Nitya Dharma. Swadharma refers to maintenance of this body and in things in relation to the body, which means our family members, mother, father, husband, wife, kids, whatnot. That's Swadharma. Nitya Dharma is the responsibility or the dharma or the duty of the spirit or the soul in relation to the Supreme Lord. So Krishna says, Arjuna, these are the 2 responsibilities we ought to perform it. That's about the practical application of the wisdom. And the 3rd thing that Krishna addresses is, what are the symptoms of one who have lived a life fulfilling both the dharmas, who have realized and who have lived a life following both the dharmas? That is called as Atmaram, that is called as self-realized person. What are the symptoms? And that makes the last part of the 2nd chapter. Like this, 2nd chapter concludes with Krishna talking about the symptoms of self-realized soul. However, going back to the case of Arjuna, what was Arjuna's situation? Put yourself at Arjuna's situation right now. Think about it. Arjuna wants to give up dharma. Which dharma he wants to give up? Nitya dharma, Swadharma. How many of you say, have you understood this terminology? I'm intentionally speaking this terminology so you kind of understand. So, Swadharma, is that clear? Swadharma is occupational responsibilities, duties for the maintenance of the body and in relation to body. And Nitya Dharma is our spiritual responsibilities. So my question is, What dharma Arjuna wanted to give up? Swadharma. How many we say Swadharma? Raise your hand. So we all on the same page. Not Nitya Dharma. Arjuna wanted to give Swadharma, which means quit his Kshatriya responsibility, go to the forest and only perform Nitya Dharma. Krishna tells at the end of second chapter, Arjuna, you need to perform both. And that leads Arjuna to confusion, because Krishna says to Arjuna, how to perform your Swadharma? Perform your actions, but be detached from the results. Second thing, Krishna says, Arjuna, if somebody performs sinful actions, it leads to sinful results. And Arjuna was thinking, my fighting with my relatives, with my brothers, with my teacher, with my great grandfather is a sinful act. So Krishna is telling me, perform your duty, do not be conscious of the result. Second, Krishna is saying, if you perform sinful action, you will get a sinful reaction. Now I am going to fight with my relatives, it's a sinful action. I don't want to get a sinful reaction. So Arjuna is confused, what should I do? And that is how third chapter begins, where third chapter, first verse, Arjuna asks, my dear Lord, what do you want me to do? You want me to fight, or you want me to go to the forest? You're talking about renunciation. What is renunciation? So this chapter opens up with a question mark. What actually is renunciation? Is renunciation means to give up Swadharma and only practice Nitya Dharma? That's not the understanding of Krishna. Let's take a look at it. And that's what we're going to call it, art of smart work. Before we get into the subject matter, let's define the acronym for this chapter. TREE, T-R-E-E, that would be our acronym. And the first is T for Tyaga, renunciation, verses 1 to 9. Are we clear on the flow? So my objective with this kind of a concise presentation of Bhagavad Gita is to just familiarize you with some key concepts, terminologies, first. Second, with the flow of discussion. So when you open and read it, you don't get bewildered and confused. Oh, it looks like complicated, but you read it as a storytelling. There's a conversation, and you understand what conversation is going on. So, Tyaga or renunciation. Bhagavad Gita is not about leaving, Bhagavad Gita is about living. Very interesting. How many of you have heard, if in case a young kid, or not a young kid, if let's say a young man or a lady would have to read Bhagavad Gita, then सब कुछ छोड़ छाड़ कर चले जाएंगे, वो त्याग का मार्ग स्वीकार कर लेंगे. कितने लोगों ने ऐसे सुना है? हाथ खड़ा करो, जरा जोर से हाथ खड़ा करो, बाकी लोगों का उत्साह बढ़ता है, right? That's pretty interesting. I don't know from where this kind of a thing has come. Arjuna wants to go, and Krishna is telling Arjuna not to go. But we are telling, if we read Bhagavad Gita, we will leave everything. Whereas the first recipient of the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita did not leave anything. But we Kali Yuga product are saying, हमने पढ़ लिया तो हम सब छोड़ के चले जाएंगे. So I don't know from where this confusion rises. That's an interesting confusion here. So Bhagavad Gita is not about leaving things. Bhagavad Gita is the art of living. How to live your life to make it to perfection. So the question arises here, renunciation or work. Just like for Arjuna, practice of spirituality meant an active retirement from household duties and a professional life. That's what he thought. He thought, oh well, if I want to take to the path of Nitya Dharma, I cannot be engaged in Swadharma. Let me just do one thing at a time. That's a misunderstanding which Krishna clarifies through this chapter. Arjuna, this is not how the life is lived. If you think that you can just quit, give up service or activities and accept to another activity, you will not be able to function like this. So Bhagavad Gita is not about leaving. Bhagavad Gita is about living. So for those of us or those who think that I can leave everything, go to the forest and live a life of a renunciate, Krishna tells to Arjuna, Arjuna, if you think because you are a Kshatriya, your duty is to pick a weapon and punish the culprit, somebody challenges you, then you cannot not fight. You're thinking just because you feel today that you don't want to fight, you will go to the forest wear a dress of a mendicant or a sadhu, you will become a sadhu, you are mistaken. While you are living in a forest, if somebody would challenge you, you will again pick a weapon and fight. Which means your determination to not fight is short-lived because you are conditioned. You have trained yourself in a certain manner of living. Therefore, you are called as a Kshatriya. If somebody challenges you, you are going to fight. Let me tell you what it means for all of you. We all have conditioned ourselves to remain active, which means even if there is no work, zero work, none of us can sit idle. How many of you agree? Raise your hands. We will find some engagement, even it is a wasteful engagement, but we cannot sit idle. Yes or no? So how much you decide for yourself that I'm going to take a break, I'm going to go on vacation, and I'm just going to spend good time in vacation. How many of you have had an experience when you thought like this, and when you ended up in vacation, all the while you were thinking about your work life, office life, some life? Yes or no? So this is a function of your mind. If you're conditioned in a certain way, you can't just say, I quit, I change. It doesn't work. We need to purify our mind. So therefore Krishna says, Arjuna, you cannot do like that. There's a process of purifying and reconditioning your mind. Not that because you think today, it will happen. Those who think, I quit and I can live my life, it's just not going to work out. Don't be a pretender. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smara indriyatha vimudhatvam laptop mityachara sauchyate. So Krishna says, one who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly delude himself and is called a pretender. In the very first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we had discussed what Bhagavad Gita is all about. Bhagavad Gita changes of perception. Perception is a function of mind. When your mind changes, accordingly your action changes or gets modified. So here Krishna is saying, maybe externally you have withdrawn your senses. You're sitting like a sadhu, self-controlled sadhu, but your mind is still contemplating on sense object. One family had visited Haridwar. This was long, long ago. You know that famous Har Ki Pauri at Haridwar, the place to take bath. And a sadhu was sitting there. A man was sitting in a saffron dress, is sitting there. And the family, it was a big Agarwal family, joint family. And the ladies wanted to take a bath, and they were wearing a gold chain. So the man was worried what to do about it. So husband thought, okay, Sadhuji is sitting there. And he was apparently in a samadhi. And he had his kamandalu, etc. like this. So this man, husband came and he said, Maharaj, हम बस अभी स्नान लेकर आते हैं, कृपा करके हमारा कुछ सामान रखा है, आप इस सामान को बस आपके सामने रखा है तो शायद कोई लेके नहीं जाएगा. Without speaking anything, he kind of indicated, I'll take care, all right. They went for taking a bath. After 15-20 minutes or maybe half an hour when they came back, everything was intact as it is. But only one thing was missing, the gold chain. And before also Sadhu has not said anything, and the family was in like, what happened? Where is the gold chain? Where is the gold chain? And Sadhu was in rapt attention, rapt samadhi. And they were pious family, religious family, so they were scared of the wrath of Sadhu if in case they disturbed the Sadhu. And Sadhu ne kahin aankh khol ke shraap praap de di. So they didn't want to actually disturb the Sadhu. And suddenly, not knowing what to do, completely hopeless, suddenly the wave of wind came. And Sadhu had an upper cloth kept somewhere nearby. And suddenly when the wave of wind came, the upper cloth flew. And right underneath that upper cloth was a gold chain. so that individual only had lifted it, kept it there. So this understanding of renunciation does not depend on the dress that you wear. That's the very first thing the third chapter clarifies. Because somebody is wearing a saffron attire doesn't mean he is a renunciate. For example, to think somebody eats only one time meal in a day is a yogi, then the greatest yogis are the beggars sitting in Hinjawadi Chowk. Hayana? Maybe some of them may not be getting even one time meal. Then they are the greatest yogi. So actions, your externals does not determine who you are. Those are your karmic reactions because of which you are put into so and so conditions like this. So, what is renunciation? So, renunciation is not about giving actions. Renunciation is about giving the desire to enjoy the results of action. It will take a time to seep in, and to help you understand that, I'm going to go back to second chapter of Bhagavad Gita and quote the famous verse of one of the famous verses of the second chapter. Karmanevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phal heturbhur mate sangasta karmani. So this verse speaks about four very vital instructions in relation to work. There is a terminology in Sanskrit which is called as karmatmakam buddhi. Karmatmakam buddhi means our mind is conditioned to work. सोते जागते हमारे मन में हमेशा भविष्य को लेकर कोई ना कोई प्लानिंग चलती रहती है. Have you agreed? When we were studying, we were thinking about our college life. Somehow I should get admission in college. When we got admission in college life, then we were thinking about somehow I should get job. When we got job, somehow we were thinking about can I change a job? Isn't it? It goes on and goes on like this. Have you ever felt now your mind says, all right, chill pill. I got everything that I want. Anyone? From the young child to the elderly here, never going to happen like this. All right, so let's take a look at this verse. This is an introductory verse on the topic that we're discussing here. And this discussion is going to continue until the 5th chapter. So we'll do some kind of a discussion and go on to the details later on. So what these four things Krishna says, karmane vadikaraste. First thing, karmane vadikaraste, you have the right to perform your duty. Karmana eva adhikaraste. So it is your right to perform your duty, which means you cannot give it up. It means to be responsible. Whatever task you have to be responsible. I have used the term concentrate. Concentration means awareness, absorption and attention, which means when you're doing anything, be detail oriented. And I'll give you one example. I'm not going to go in details. There had been plenty of research on the subject matter of multitasking. These days we believe a lot of in multitasking that we can accomplish. There have been plenty of research on the subject of multitasking where they have found out multitasking only destroys your performance. You can perform well only if you focus on one thing at a time. These are scientific research. I don't want to get into this. You can look at it, at leisure. If in case time permits, I'll give you some examples of it. Second thing, karmana evadhikaraste. So you have the right to perform your duty, concentrate. Second point, Krishna says, karmana evadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan. You have the right to perform your duty, but you have no right to claim the results of your action. You are not entitled to the fruits of your action. Be detached. It is such a profound wisdom. It's such a profound wisdom. Just for a second, think about it. What is the major reason of crisis and stress and anxiety in your life? Is it not about the result? मुझे वो मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा, प्रमोशन मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा, सैलरी हाइक होगी नहीं होगी, मुझे रिजल्ट आएगा नहीं आएगा. Yes or no? Whatever we do, with the very first question we ask is what's in for me, which means what am I going to get? And about what I'm going to get, we have our own understanding and we keep on thinking about it. I'm going to get it or not, get it or not. Whereas Krishna says here, no, don't think about it. It's a profound subject matter we'll discuss in the 5th chapter. What Krishna means by you have no right on the fruits of your action because you are not the doer, only doer. There are 3 other doers which makes the work happen. Karma, Daiva, Kala gives the result. Karma is your action, Deva is providence, and Kala is a time factor. I'll just quickly give you an example. Just like a farmer sows the seed. क्योंकि मैं एक किसान होने के नाते मैंने जमीन में बीज बो दिया है, फसल मिलेगी हाँ या ना? Yes or no? No. How can you say yes? Just because I have sowed the seed does not guarantee you will get this harvest. When you have sowed the seed, then you depend on Daiva. That is rains. बारिश होगी तो अनाज उपजेगा. बारिश भी हो गई, कर्म था मेरा, एक्शन था सीड बोना. बारिश होना दैव था, कर्म हो गया, दैव हो गया. अब फसल मिलेगा. Would I get the harvest? Yes or no? Now you have to wait. Kala, time. Then if all three things are aligned together, then you get the result. Yes or no? Which means in karma, deva and kala, how much are you the doer? Only 1/3. 2/3 is beyond you. Therefore Krishna says, do not consider yourself to be the cause of the result. It is just illusion. And there are more details to this. We'll discuss that. I'm just introducing the subject matter here. Then Krishna says, never consider yourself to be the cause. Okay, sorry, I missed out both the things. Second was, you're not entitled to the fruits, which means results are given by me. And the third, which we just spoke about as an example, you're not the cause of your result, which I just explained you right now. And fourth, never be attached to not performing your duty, which means never be lazy. Krishna again tells Arjuna, Yudhisvaha vigata jvara. Vigata jvara. Jvara means laziness. Give up the laziness, get up and fight. Now, do you think Bhagavad Gita actually is talking about becoming more responsible, more dutiful? Yes or no? Which means every corporate guy, everyone should read it to really become passionate about work. They say passion is my work. They only become passionate, but they don't understand. They don't cry about the result. That's the second equation. So that's the aspect of it. Let's just give you one word understanding for it. So first, Krishna says, be responsible. Second, he says, be detached, because results are not determined by you. Even if you have sowed the seed, rains are not dependent on you. You don't decide. So don't be attached to the results. So do your best, which means, for example, if it is said, you don't determine the result, that can make us little, then theek hai, main kuch bhi karu. If results are not dependent on me, then why to work? Then Krishna says, don't be lazy. Get up and perform. So the idea is, do your best. God helps those who help themselves. Since the only thing we have full control over is our actions, we must do our best in all we do. And here is an asterisk. Do the best, but your best need not be the best, which means do not get caught up with perfectionist idea. Then again you become stressful. Now this is again a very profound concept. You have certain abilities which we fail to realize when we get into the imitation culture. If we see somebody performing well in certain thing, then we think, if I also do, I can also become good like that. But it may not be necessarily meant for you. So life, before we want to live and experience life, there has to be sufficient self-introspection to really understand what are my skills, strengths, weaknesses and what not. Unless we know who we are, what's our capabilities, whole of our life, we're just going to cry for one reason to another. How many times have you seen people, a year ago they were struggling with one problem, that problem got resolved. Then after that they were struggling with another problem. बस बेटा बस ये problem एक solve हो जाए. बस ये जीवन भर शांति शांति रहेगी. That problem got solved. Even before that ended, they already had a backlog of another set of problem. And they were harping on another subject matter. Bus this one last problem. After that everything will be okay. And they have lived their life, whole life, only centered and surrounded by problems. How many of you have seen that? Please raise your hands. How many of you living a life like this? Raise your hand. Don't shy. How many of you living a life only centered around problems, problems and problems? It has to be everybody. If you don't understand the science of Bhagavad Gita, you have no way to live a solution-centric life because you don't know the solution. So therefore you're only harping on the problem like that. Alright, so be detached, be responsible. Third, don't be falsely proud because you're not the cause of the results, and don't be lazy. So this is a fundamental understanding on art of work. Now let's come to the art of smart work. This is how you perform an action. What is art of smart work? According to Vedic science, art of smart work means your work becomes worship. So all of you, those of you who have seen people get up in the morning, they light up a candle or incense, wave it in front of the altar and do everything. That may not necessarily be a worship. But Bhagavad Gita says your actions, your work can become worship. Rather than waving an incense in front of the altar, more pleasing to the Lord would be if you perform your actions or duties in the right consciousness. So we're talking about changing our consciousness. What is the right consciousness? That brings us to the subject of what is the art of smart work. We understood about art of work, but what is a smart work where our consciousness is appropriate? Please repeat after me. Yagnathat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samacharaha. यज्ञ अर्थात कर्मणो अन्यत्र, यज्ञ के अलावा लोकोयम कर्म बंधना. In other words, if a work is performed other than sacrifice, a work is not performed as a sacrifice, that work will only bind you. Tad artham karma kaunteya. Now when you do sacrifice, have you ever done any fire sacrifice, any yagyas? How many of you have done that? Raise your hand. So there is a yajaman who performs, and there is an object, or there is a deity for whom you are doing sacrifice, right? So when Krishna is saying work is a sacrifice, work has to be done as sacrifice, it means who is the object who we are trying to please. Krishna says, Tad artham karma kaunteya. Arjuna, if work as a sacrifice is performed for me, mukta sangha samachara, that work is not going to bind you. Let me introduce you to the concept of karma. We'll discuss that in the 4th chapter when it is discussed more in detail. Karma has multiple connotations. Karma means action. Karma also means results of your action. So karma, any action performed is karma, and the results of your action, which is called as good karma, bad karma, is karmic reactions. So when karma is used, it is used for both the meanings here. So Krishna is saying if you perform an action or work, whatever occupation you do or whatever household, I mean, wherever you think you're a housewife, you're a teacher, you're a professor, you're an IT engineer, whatnot, whatever you identify as, if it is not done as a sacrifice to please Krishna, the reactions of that action is going to bind you, which means you will have to suffer both either the good reactions or the bad reactions. But if work is done for the pleasure as a sacrifice for Krishna, then you don't get affected by any reactions. I know this could be a little heavy to comprehend. At least, kuch to samajh aaya. I'll build up on this. It's going to take me 2 more sessions to build up on this, because this subject matter continues up to the 5th chapter. Even Arjuna had a difficulty understanding, so it's going to take a time for us. Let me give you an example what it means. At least this much you understood how karma can be worshipped. Krishna says karma is performed as sacrifice. Just think about it, how much we become attached to the idea, I am the doer. I worked for it. Now let's go through imagination. Imagine somewhere across the side there is a big society, construction is going on. Now there is a builder who hired a construction company. Construction company have hired a workforce, laborers, who gonna do all the work. They do all the work. Neither the construction manager does nor the owner does. However, the land belongs to the owner. It is the owner who spends the money, gets all the raw materials. It is the owner, the project owner, the builder. He is the one who pays to the construction company. And that construction company gets the salary which distributes to the workforce on the ground, and all the raw material, everything is provided by the owner. Yes? The worker on the ground does all the hard work. Like all of you do the whole hard work of going to your IT companies or working day and night. When the labor does the work, after that, let's say there are 100 families involved into the construction. After they do the work, each of the family go and sit one apartment saying that मैंने बनाया है, ये मेरा है, मैंने मेहनत करी है, तुम्हारा क्या है, मेहनत किसने करी है? If I say I did all the work, I put the brick, I laid the foundation, I put the roof, I did the plaster, I did the painting. काम किसने करा? मैंने. बिल्डिंग बनाई किसने? मैंने. तो जो बिल्डिंग बन के निकली वो रिजल्ट किसका होना चाहिए? मेरा. So that building, an apartment should belong to whom? To the builder or to the labor? To the labor. Isn't it? It should belong to the labor, but it doesn't belong to the labor, right? Why it doesn't belong to the labor? Why it doesn't belong to the labor? Because labor knows everything that I have done has been provided to. I didn't purchase the bricks. I didn't purchase the steel bars or whatever it is, construction material. I have just assembled all of them and given a shape. And for that, I am getting my salary. Now, come back to your life. We are living our life. We didn't create the air that we breathe. We didn't create the water that we drink. We didn't create the food that we eat that supplies sufficient energy to the body to continue functioning. Yes or no? Yes. We didn't create our intelligence. It is God given. We use that intelligence, manipulate the matter and give a shape. And then we put a name, invented by so and so scientist. So to whom does it belong to now? To that rascal or to the one who gave him the intelligence, provide the air, water, food, everything for his sustenance, nourishment and maintenance? To whom does it belong? That's it. So simple, isn't it? Now, we cannot not do it, which means for us to live in this world, we have to act. So if you become a laborer who did all the work, and now you put a lock, your lock, and lock it yourself inside in the apartment saying that ghar mera hai, मैं बाहर नहीं निकलूंगा. Is it right to call that labor a thief? Yes or no? And is it right that labor be punished according to the laws of the court? Yes. How do we get that punishment? When we say मेरा है, मैंने किया है, मैंने मेहनत करी है. And that punishment to us, according to the laws of nature, get manifested in the form of various diseases, mental anxieties and stress and whatnot. That's it. There is a laws of the state and there is a laws of the nature. Therefore, Krishna is saying, if you want to do a work, the best way of doing a work which you cannot avoid, the best way of doing a work is understand you are not the performer. You are just the manipulator. Who is providing you all the resources and for whose pleasure you should do it. The labor does it for the satisfaction of the builder, the way builder wants it. If a builder doesn't like it this way, they say break it and redo it. The labor has to do it. So he does it for whose satisfaction? Builders. We are supposed to do whose satisfaction? That is called as art of smart work. Are we on the same page? Paka? Alright, it's a big concept if you have understood it. So, this is called as, technically in the yoga science, this art of smart work is called as karma yoga. Which means, karma, action, yoga means connection with the Supreme, connecting with the Supreme through the means of action. Then there is Jnana Yoga, connecting with the Supreme through the process of knowledge. Then there is Ashtanga Yoga, connecting with the Supreme through the process of meditation. Then there is Bhakti Yoga, connecting with the Supreme with everything that we have. Prana, Artha, Dhiya, Vacha. We engage everything in the service of the Lord. Now, when the laborer does the work, and he acknowledges and recognizes this is not my building, this belongs to the builder. Does he receive his wages? Yes or no? But somebody tries to be a thief, his wages would be cut and he'll be punished. So in case all of you go into IT office, when you're working, don't you get your wages? You also get your wages. So in other words, if we're going to serve the Lord, why wouldn't the Lord take care of us when he's anyways taking care of so many of us who's not serving him? If we start serving him, come to this acknowledgement that he exists, why wouldn't he take care of us? And if we get into the good terms with the Lord, then it's all balle balle. Unnecessary, we are struggling in this life, in this world, with unnecessary, self-made, man-made created problems. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga. So, this we're just getting in the beginning of the subject matter like this. So here Arjuna reflected on Lord's instructions and he thought, well, my dear Krishna, what about those who cannot perform Karma Yoga? How can they advance? All right, Krishna, we understand work should be done as a sacrifice for your pleasure. But what to do? There are people still going to be there who just cannot do it. They're self-centered, they're selfish, and on top of it, they're less intelligent. Is there no way for their advancement? Krishna says no. There is always a way of advancement, and that brings us to the second section of this third chapter titled as Our Rungs of the Yoga Ladder. What is this rungs of the yoga ladder? Here in this following verses, Krishna is going to speak about different steps and stages of progress. However, that will not be my focus now. I would discuss about this yoga ladder when I have discussed about different yogas in the 6th chapter, because we have short time. This third chapter is one of the complicated chapters. I mean, because it pertains to our nature. It takes a while to understand, so I'm going to just keep it to some simple concepts here. So here in this discussion comes a subject which is one of my favorite subjects. I often don't discuss that subject at this point of time when I'm talking about this session, but because this is Pitr Paksh, that occasion is going on, then I thought I need to speak on this. We just cannot skip it. And what it is, let's take a look at it. In 3rd chapter, verses 11 to 15, Krishna speaks about a very profound concept called as Yajna system. Yajna. And this concept of Yajna, Krishna is again going to speak in the 4th chapter also. We'll delve more deeply there, but let me introduce this here. What Yajna means. Yajna does not mean, the moment you hear the word Yajna, what is the first thought that comes to your mind? Fire sacrifice. That is not only Yajna. Yajna means sacrifice. Sacrifice. Now, for example, mother sacrifices her comfort for the child. Isn't it? So in definition, let me give a simple definition of sacrifice. Sacrifice means compromising one's own sense pleasure for the sake of another person. Would that be correct definition? Agreed? Compromising one's sense pleasures for the sake of other person, that is called as sacrifice. Here Krishna says, Arjuna, we as a living entity at all times are dependent. It's a different thing. We are striving hard to become independent. But think about it. What is our independence? Despite having a citizen of an independent nation, despite paying water tax, road tax, electricity bill, fanala, nikana, so much, yet if you go on highway, then you pay toll tax. So यहाँ पे road tax पहले लिया ही क्यों? I mean, I don't want to raise some doubts among the setup establishment, but I'm just saying, now you say you are an independent citizen. बोलो टोल टैक्स वाले भी जाकर मैं स्वतंत्र हूँ, नहीं दूंगा, चलेगा? So you're dependent. Are you dependent or no? Imagine you get a salary. Isn't it interesting when you get your first, you get your, what do you say, as offer letter. An offer letter says 30 lakh rupees per annum. You're super excited. And then you say, hey, wait a second. How much is the tax deduction? And suddenly you realize, oh man, so much tax deduction. And you really can't do because it happens right at the base salary. Can you say, nahi dunga, main swatantra hu? Can you say that? You can't. So are you independent? सपने में इंडिपेंडेंट हो केवल, सच्चाई में तो हो नहीं, कहाँ सच्चाई में इंडिपेंडेंट हो? So I'm just making this more simpler so you get this very profound subject matter. Where Krishna says, Arjuna, you asked me a question. If a person cannot perform karma yoga, which means if he cannot perform action for my pleasure, what is the way for his advancement? Karma yoga is here. If he cannot do that, do this. What is this? This is called as karma kanda. What is karma kanda? Karma kanda, these are a set of instructions given in Vedic sciences which governs your actions, wherein you acknowledge, this is Pitra Paksha. What is the idea of Pitra Paksha? Idea of Pitra Paksha is, the concept is the male has to do it. I'm not going to get into the discussion right now, but let me focus on the concept. If you look at the glories, if you really understand the subject matter, how brilliant these things are. The concept of Pitra Paksha is Pitras, Pitralok or Devlok, etc., etc. The idea is in the heavenly realms, the 6 months of our year is equivalent to 1 day. 1 day means 12 hours. So this time of Pitra Paksha is a time in heaven when the Devatas are waking up, or Pitras are waking up. First concept. Okay. Second thing, the idea of Pitra Paksha is, Pitra doesn't refer to your father, but forefathers. On this occasion, to express our gratitude because of their efforts, nourishment and care, I got this body. To maintain that continuous flow and culture of gratitude and identity, I belong to a great heritage. That's what Krishna so many times tell, O son of Pratha. Hey, Arjuna na Arjun bolna yaar, meko maa ke naam pe kyun bula raha hai? Krishna so many times call Arjuna, hey son of Pratha, O descendant of Kuru Vamsha. Hey, you tell me, call me by my name. Why are you calling me Mr. Agarwal? Are मेरा नाम बुलाओ. Just to remind Arjuna, Arjuna, you have a great lineage. You're a son of a great lady, a chaste woman by the name of Kunti. You are a descendant of Kuru, King Kuru. You can't act like this. So it's just a sense of that, acknowledgement to the family tradition that I belong to and the family tradition that I need to uphold is the idea of Pitra Paksha. And when we express our gratitude, when we remember them, but naturally we receive their blessings. That is a word, that is the meaning of parasparam. Here in this subject matter, I don't have Sanskrit here for all of these verses. Krishna says, Arjuna, for people in this world to live happily, they depend on food, they depend on rain, they depend on water, they depend on air, fire, etc. We have not created any of it. For all of it is provided by different devatas. Why would devatas continue providing you? You also have to do something for them, isn't it? So I have created a system called as parasparam, mutual dependence between you and the devatas. When devatas are pleased by you, they will bless you. They will give you enough sufficient for your life. And if in case you do not perform your service towards them, then they will deprive auspiciousness from your life. And that is called as yajna. So whenever you have performed fire yajna, you have put ahuti on the name of Om Suryaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, which means it's a way of offering oblations to them by which they get nourished. When they are nourished, they would fulfill your desires. That is called as karma kanda or yajna system. And if you don't do it, then you get punishment. Punishment is not out of envy. Punishment is just like a mother. When she sees a child doing a wrong thing, she slaps the child to make him do the right thing. Simple example, imagine if you see your child running on the main street, despite you warning him, are you going to slap him one day or not? If I don't slap him, he might meet an accident and break his bones. Similarly, if the punishment is not there in our life, because we are not following it in terms of any kind of inauspiciousness, crisis, etc., etc., then we will completely become detoured and will destroy our life. Therefore, those problems comes in our life, which is said if you don't do Pitrupaksha like that. So that's the idea of this yajna system. Krishna says, at least follow karma kanda. I'll go quickly with this. Perform the prescribed yajna, and all your desires will be fulfilled like this. And when you do so, demigods will be pleased. And if you do not do so, you are thief. Krishna says you will be called as a thief. Again, the idea of yagnartha, karmana, anyatra. If you do not do work as a sacrifice for the Lord, if you cannot do it, at least do it for the pleasure of devtas. If you don't do any of that, you are a thief, because everything is provided by them. Think for a second. You have a grown-up body now. What was your contribution in becoming of what you have become today? प्रभु जी बहुत मलाई कोफ्ता खाया है मैंने बचपन में, कितनी मेहनत कर करके चबाया है मैंने, सारी मेहनत तो मैंने करी है, आपने चबाने की मेहनत करी है, पाचन करने में आपने कुछ नहीं करा है. If you would not have digested that, nothing would have happened to you. And what was your contribution in digestion? We only try to spoil digestion by overeating. But digestion doesn't happen because we intend to do it, isn't it? So that's the point over here. You are a thief. And here comes a very important verse. I wanted all of you to pay attention. Sometimes vegetarian says, हम शाकाहारी हैं, हम शुद्धाहारी हैं, हम बहुत पवित्र हैं. आप भगवद गीता पढ़ो, पता चलेगा पवित्र कितने हैं आप. Let's pay attention to this verse, what Krishna says. यज्ञ शिष्टाशिनः शन्तो मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषः भुञ्जते ते तु अघं पापा ये पचन्ति आत्मकारणा. यज्ञ शिष्टा आशिनः शन्तो मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषः, which means if one honors food which has been first offered in yajna and then accepts it as prasadam, muchyante sarva kilvishe, that destroys all the inauspiciousness from your life. Okay? And we only offer vegetarian things in yajna, fruits, vegetables like that. Next to line, bhunjate te tu agam papa, you only eat sin. Ye pachanti atma karanat, if you cook anything only for your gratification and eat it, then you only eat sin. And the more sin develops here, the more this goes crazy. This is about vegetarian. So everything, see, when Krishna have already established the system of yajna, so it's not that once in a while it has to do. I remember I was speaking about this in one forum a couple of years ago. तो कुछ लोग बोले हम बच गए. मैं क्या, क्यों बच गए, तुम खाते नहीं? बोले प्रभु जी हम खाते तो हैं पर हम बच गए. कैसे बच गए? बोले देखो प्रभु जी, भगवान ने कहा है जो अपने पसंद का कुक करते हैं उनको पाप चढ़ता है. हम तो सिर्फ होटल में खाते हैं हम तो कुकिंग करते ही नहीं है. मैंने कहा यार तुम कलयुग अपराधी, अगले वर्जन में भगवान वो भी डाल देंगे जो होटल का ही खाता हो. But the principle here is not about cooking and all. If it has not been offered, therefore Prabhupada gave us a Krishna conscious culture where before we eat anything, we offer it to Krishna. And then it becomes prasad. Let me put it this way, if in case you are able to relate or not. Would you agree we have far greater advancement in technology, comforts and everything, yet people are more miserable than the previous generations? Raise your hands if you agree. There are far much more physical and mental diseases. Raise your hand high up. Have you ever wondered why? Because we have only gone away more and more from culture, from civilization. How many of you remember your mother, if anything new, let's say mithai ka dabba ya kuch bhi aata tha, your mother would first keep in front of the altar? How many of you remember? Raise your hand. I'm not going to ask how many of you would do it today. But you know the reason, because it's not been practiced. You are suffering. You know, people, the more richer, the more wealth they have, the more disease they have on their body. Go in the village, people hardly have any physical ailment. And यहाँ पे सबका दिमाग पेट दोनों ही खराब है जो शहर में रहते हैं. What's the point of living such a life if you can't even have a good health? So that's the point which mentioned here. All right, let's move forward. So that's about Karma Kanda. If you do this Karma Kanda, if you cannot do Karma Yoga, then you do Karma Kanda. So what is this yoga ladder? I'm just introducing it. We'll discuss at length in the 6th chapter. Arjuna, there is a steps to make a progress. First is Karma Kanda, regulated sense gratification, because you cannot do everything now. You can only do prescribed things, because whatever you're going to do has to be offered first. So you only offer that what can be offered. Not that you bring anything from the forest. Sakam Karma Yoga is the next step. Okay, how? Okay, let me just open all. So here, quick 1 or 2 lines here. Karma Kanda is a stepping stone. Stepping stone is not part of the ladder. Karma Yoga is the first step of the yoga ladder. Yoga ladder is the way to connect with the Absolute Truth, Supreme Lord. Yoga means connection. Karma, connecting the Lord with through your actions. Jnana Yoga, through the process of cultivation of knowledge. Ashtanga Yoga, through the process of intelligence. And Bhakti Yoga, as I said, Prana, Artha, Dhiya, Vacha. Life, Artha means wealth, Dhiya means intelligence, Vacha means speech. We dedicate everything in the service of the Lord. We try to dovetail everything in the service. That's the meaning of yoga ladder here. Alright, let's move forward. Arjuna reflected on Lord's instructions and he thought, I have no worldly desires and aspirations, and I know I am not this body, so can I retire to the forest? Because he just wanted to go. So he thought, oh, okay, if I do yajna, Devtas will be pleased and they'll give me wealth. I don't have any need for wealth. I don't want it. I have no material desires, no aspirations. So can I excuse myself? You go and tell Bhagavad Gita to somebody else, not needed for me. Those who have desires, they need Bhagavad Gita. I have no desires. Krishna said, chup chaap baithe raho. Kahin nahi ja rahe tum. Why? Then Krishna says, Arjuna, be exemplary. That's the 3rd section of the 3rd chapter. Set an example for others to follow. Why me? But why me to set an example? Krishna says, Yadyata shreshtas tattat evataro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. Shrestha refers to like a king, big people. Arjuna, you are a brother of Yudhishthira Maharaj. You are a younger brother of a king. You are a Shrestha. So whatever a great man does, Tatta Deva Tarujana is all followed by an ordinary person. Sayat pramanam kurute lokasadanu. Whatever pramanam kurute, whatever actions are done by you, everyone else follows it. Today, Shreshtas are the Bollywood actors and actresses, isn't it? If they wear pate kapade, so pate kapade is the fashion. So that's what happens. We don't think about it. You're getting the concept now? So we accept somebody as a Shrestha and then we just do it. And that's the influence of it. So Krishna says, Arjuna, you are not an ordinary person, you are a Shrestha. If you tell people that if in case you don't feel like doing a work, go to the path of renunciation, what will happen to the society? What will happen to the social culture? If a husband after getting married feels like, oh, married life is too difficult now, I made a mistake, he'll say, I'll become a sadhu. And then there will be all people sitting in the forest then. So it can't happen like this. So there has to be a proper conduct behind it. And then Krishna says, Arjuna, think about it. Even I set an example when I descend. Even I follows the custom. And Krishna says, I also perform prescribed duties, although I have no material desires. I have no hankering for a result, but I still perform. If I am a grahastha, I perform all the duties of a grahastha. If I am a student, he went to the Gurukul in Ujjain, what's the name? Sandipani Muni Ashram. Krishna and Balram became a humble servant of the Guru and followed all the instructions. And it was the desire of Sandipani Muni, please get my son. And therefore they went all over the creation to find the son of. So why Lord had to follow that? Because I also do that. So that a proper conduct is established. So Arjuna thought, oh, if that's the case, well, we need somebody to set a perfect example of renunciation. Who else can be a better person than I, Krishna, to set a perfect example of renunciation? Let me go to the forest. Krishna said, wait. Most people are not qualified to follow the example of renunciation. Krishna says, Arjuna, maybe you are qualified, but others are not qualified to do it. So do that which others also can follow. Now, the culture was you practice a life, student life, brahmachari, then you become a garhastha. Then, after when you have performed your household duties and professional responsibilities, you have grown up kids, then you go to vanaprastha. Then gradually you walk into sannyasa ashram. Now, because you are a son of a kshatriya, you're supposed to be an administrator. You just cannot walk away. After having 2 or 3 wives already, having sons, and you're on the battlefield, you cannot walk away. This is not the point to set an example of renunciation. If you are a brahmana, that's a different thing, we should allow to do it. So there has to be some understanding. So Krishna says, Arjuna, you're not fit. You are a complete misfit for the path of renunciation or giving up action. Rather, let me tell you what you should do. That's pretty interesting if you look at it. If you have ever been into a crisis, which means a little confused about what you should do, even if you're confused about what you should do, you still have made up some mind of yours. Yes or no? But because you're just not sure if that is what I should do, you still take advice from people. And while even taking advice, if a person says, no, this is wrong, then you begin to argue, नहीं आप समझ नहीं रहे हो, यही निर्णय कितना अच्छा है, ऐसा ही होना चाहिए, हाँ या ना? Regardless of what good advice, argument, logic is given, still you will say, no. Because what you wanted others to say, तुमने जो सोचा है बहुत अव्वल दर्जे का है, बहुत बढ़िया है, ऐसा ही करो. But that's not a guru-disciple relationship. Guru is supposed to tell you what is right, not to pamper the student. So Arjuna is not able to understand the defect in his understanding and action. And now Krishna says the actual defect in his understanding. And what was the defect? Let's take a look at it. Or what Krishna wanted. One of the famous verses of Bhagavad Gita. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma cetasa nirasha nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jvaraha. Vigata jvaraha, which means laziness. Arjuna, you want to find an easy way out. How many of you agree? Think about it. If you have ever been in a situation where you were confused what to do, not to do, your mind would have done a calculation, and among those solutions, options, whichever you felt were the most convenient and comfortable for your body, you would have by default opted for it. And your mind would have gone back again and again defending that this is the only way, this is the only way, this is the only way. So Krishna says, Arjuna, you are lazy. You just don't want to do what you're supposed to do. Therefore thinking, let me walk to the forest. Kaun bawal lega itna? Kaun tension lega? Let me be in the forest. Now, Vigata Jvaraha. Yudhasva Vigata Jvaraha. And how to perform your duty? Mai sarvani karmani. Does it? Do it for me. For my satisfaction. As a sacrifice. That is the perfection of work. Sanyas adhyatma cetasa. In the conscious, cetasa means conscious. Sanyas adhyatma cetasa. In the consciousness of sannyas, renunciation. Which means, do your action. Do not worry about the result. That's my duty. So don't worry about the result. Don't think about it, if I fight, who will die, who would live. You do your action of punishing the culprits. Who dies, who lives, that's my decision. Sanyasya adhyatma chetasaha. Nirashir nirmamo bhutva asha. Nirashir, without any desire or expectation. Nirmamo, without identification of me and mine. Bhutva. Yuddhasva vigata jvara. Get up and fight. If you look at work, how many of you agree, before any action, before any affiliation of which whatever we attach to ourselves, the very fundamental question we always ask, Mera kya? What's in for me? WIIFE or WIIFM. What's in for me? We always function that way. How many of you agree before we even start an action, we start dreaming about the results? And while dreaming about the results, our actual performance that should be there, it goes down the drain. Because हम सिर्फ स्वप्न में ही रहते हैं. That is laziness. Krishna says, just give up all that. Do his sacrifice. Do it as a matter of duty. Then only you can succeed. That's the way of living a life. So, why perform your prescribed duty and not another is another subject matter. Steadiness, social organization. I'll speak about this in the 18th chapter. That time I'll explain this. Now, at this point of time, Arjuna said, he understood the whole concept of karma yoga, and he said, even though I know the best course of action, in other words, Arjuna says, my dear Lord, I totally agree. I have understood the concept of karma yoga. You have correctly identified it was my laziness. I was looking for an easy way out. And you have pinned it, saying that I am just trying to find an easy way out. I am willing to get up and perform my duty of a Kshatriya. I am ready to fight. But, Krishna, there is a challenge. And I believe all of us will agree, we also face that. Sometimes we understand, and when we understand, we think this is the right thing, we're going to continue to do it. But the moment we come out of the situation, we walk back to our own quarters, then we lose the determination to follow that. How many of you agree? That's what Arjuna is saying here. Even though I know the best course of action, but what is it that impels me time and again to act improperly and against my good intelligence? In other words, I cannot keep my determination steady. I know the right course of action, but somehow I get pulled again and again to doing the things which are not right. How many of you agree with this problem statement here? Please raise your hand. तो कौन कह सकता है कि ये एक प्राचीन कॉन्वर्सेशन है जिसका आज हमारे जीवन में कोई तालमेल नहीं है? Every single conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is directly relevant to our subject matter. So that brings us to the last subject matter, E, enemy of the soul. Let me see if I have a verse here. Okay, verse is not here. Fine. So I'll just quote the verse which Arjuna says. And after that, I'm going to pause it here for today. And I'll just do a quick recap, because now the discussion is going to get into a second, we can say, a train of thoughts, which is very important and vital. I will do that next week. And that I will club it with the 4th chapter, a part of 4th chapter, the history of Bhagavad Gita. We'll club that together and we'll do it that way. Because it could be overdosage. You hear too much. Because I just wanted to hold on to the concept of karma and jnana, or yajna. So at least, okay. So here, Arjuna says, Atha kena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. By what one is impelled to commit a sinful activity, although he doesn't want to do it, but despite his desire, or despite his effort not to do it, he ends up committing a mistake. And Krishna says, yes, a valid question. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna, Samudbhava, Mahashano, Mahapapma, Vidhi, Enamhi, Vairinam. Arjuna, yes, there is a greatest enemy of yours, not outside of you, is within you. And here Krishna takes on a very incredible journey of finding out that who the great enemy is, not the greatest enemy, and how to defeat the greatest enemy. That's the subject matter of the rest of the chapter 3. So, before we conclude, we'll do a quick recap of what we discussed, of the concepts. Chapter 3, titled as Karma Yoga. We began our discussion with Arjuna raising a question. Krishna, you want me to work or you want me to renounce? You want me to fight or you want me to go to the forest? So Krishna said, Arjuna, why do you have a doubt? He said, Krishna, the reason for my doubt is because you said if somebody performs sinful actions, they get sinful result. And you are asking me to fight a battle. kill my own relatives. That's a sinful action, because of which I'm going to incur sinful reactions. Why do I incur sinful reaction? Better I don't fight. What is the use of doing a karma because of which I'm going to get bad result? Then Krishna said, wait a second. Let me tell you what renunciation is. Renunciation is not about giving up actions. Renunciation is about giving the desire to enjoy the fruits of your action. Is it making sense? Which means you're working in an IT company, you get a certain salary, and now you want to use all that wealth for your own sake. That is called as enjoying the fruit of your results. That is considered sinful. And to explain you that, I quoted a verse from 2nd chapter, and we titled that as Art of Work. What is art of work? कर्मणेवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन कहते हैं कर्म फल हेतुर्भुर माते संगस्त अकर्मणि. 4 things Krishna says in that. You have the right to perform your duty, which means be responsible, but you're not entitled to the results. Be detached, because results are not defined by your action. Third, you're not the cause of your action. And to help you understand we are not the cause of our action, I gave an example of the builder, the construction engineer, and the labor. Because labor does the construction doesn't mean the apartment belongs to him. Because raw material, everything was not gathered by him. Similarly, because we have performed an action, I gave another example of a farmer sows a seed. But his seed will go to the stage of harvesting only if there is a rain and he waits for Kala, time factor. So Daiva and Kala is not in the hand of farmers. So our result that we get is only 1/3, depend on our effort. And then Krishna says last thing, never be lazy. Oh, when if in case I am not the doer, why to work? Krishna says no, you can never give up your work, because you have conditioned yourself. Even if you sit idle for a minute, you will go into planning stage. Yes or no? So you cannot give up work. So how do I do a work? Then Krishna gives the definition, art of smart work. Yagna arthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Here in this chapter, Krishna for the first time introduced the terminology of yagya. The work should be done as a sacrifice, which means tadartham karma kaunteya. Sacrifice is always done for someone. Definition of sacrifice, we give a definition of sacrifice. Sacrifice is not only fire sacrifice. Sacrifice means sacrificing one's own sense pleasures for the satisfaction of other person. Just like a mother sacrifice for the child, the father sacrifice for the family. That is the meaning of sacrifice. So Arjuna, you do it as a sacrifice. Why? I want it for my pleasure, like this. Then Arjuna said, my dear Lord, what if somebody is not able to work for your pleasure? Krishna says, okay, perform karma kanda. Karma kanda means do your duty, please the authorities, and you get the results in joy. And there Krishna speaks of the system of yajna, parasparam. And I gave an example, the body that you have well built today, you have not done anything for it. You have not created water, air, the food. Even if you think, I went and purchased the vegetables, I am the one who cooked it, I am the one who ate it. But you are not the one who digested it. If you don't have the ability to digest, so how can that whole thing turn into a nutrient? So like that, the system of yajna was established. So Arjuna, if not, at least do it. When you do yajna for devatas, devatas are pleased and they'll provide you enough rain, enough grain, enough auspiciousness, enough wealth. Like that, I have created a system of mutual dependency between you and devatas. And if you don't do it, you will be called as thief. और जो चोर होता है उसको पिटाई से ज़्यादा उसका मन हमेशा दुखी रहता है. क्यों? वो हमेशा इस भय में रहता है, कब पकड़ा जाऊंगा, कब पकड़ा जाऊंगा. Therefore, if you see more than physical problems, our mind is troubled. Always have some other problem that our mind faces. So Arjuna says, well, my dear Lord, I have no desires for wealth. So can I go to the forest now? Why should I do yajna? So Krishna says, set an example. Yadat acharati shreshta tatta devatarojanaha. Even when I come to this world, I set an example. I went to Gurukul, I served my spiritual master Sandipani Muni. I got married, I followed all the rules and regulations of Grahastha Ashram. I gave charity, I did this, follow that. Then Arjuna thought, well, my dear Lord, if that's the case, somebody in the society should be there to set an example of renunciation. Let me go to the forest. I'll teach people how to renounce. Krishna said, don't do that. Even if you think doing that, tomorrow somebody will challenge you, you'll pick a weapon and fight again. You're not qualified for the renunciation. Even if you are qualified, people who are going to follow you may not be qualified for that. Therefore, do not run away from your duty. Let me tell you the problem and the flaw with you. And that was the last verse which we read for today. Mai sarvani karamani sanyasya dhyatma chetasa nirasha nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajara. Arjuna, you have become lazy. So you want to find an easy way out. All of us do that. You want to find an easy way out. Get up. Give up your laziness. Mai sarvani karmani. Do it for my pleasure. Sannyas adhyatma chetasa. Be in the consciousness of renunciation. What is the conscious renunciation? Do not worry about the result. You just worry about fighting with all your heart, with all determination. Nirashir nirmamo bhatva. Do not have any expectation from this war. And do not see in relationship of my guru, my teacher. Give up the concept of me and mine. Get up and fight. And then Arjuna thought, my dear Lord, I have understood it. I totally agree with this. But my doubt here is, despite my intelligence being fixed at this point of time, determination does not continue. We decide we're going to do it. But tomorrow again we think, hoga, nahi hoga. And then we again get pulled into our old conditionings. How can I address that? Krishna says, well, let me tell you that. What Krishna says, we'll see that next Saturday when we meet. Hare Krishna. पता नहीं कुछ समझ आया नहीं आया आप लोगों को कितना गया. It's a little complicated subject. It took me years and years to really make sense of it, how it works. So any questions? It's a subject matter which should have some questions. Let's take some questions here.
One question I wanted to ask is that if we get detached to outcomes or the results of our actions, then how do we improve? Like if we are not getting actions consistently, how do we ensure? If we are detached, then we'll think, okay, we have done an action, but then we'll not think of improving. So
a very valid question. If I work in the spirit of detachment from the result, how do I measure my success? Isn't it? How do I know I'm improving myself? Therefore, the very first point was be dutiful. Make your best performance. Karmane vadhi karaste. You have the right to perform your duty and do it nicely. First thing. Second thing, when Krishna is telling this to Arjuna, he's not telling Arjuna to act independently. Because Arjuna have already accepted Krishna as his guru. Which means whatever Arjuna is going to do, it would be under the supervision and under the purview of his spiritual master. So in that way, even if somebody thinks I'm not performing to that well or to that degree, there is someone else who is going to give him corrections, going to give him guidance if you're on the right track or not. Ultimately, Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight for him. Similarly, if in case we are living our life for the pleasure of someone, then that person is going to tell us, you need to make a little more progress, you need to put a little more effort. If you see all through the journey, it is not that Krishna only spoke to Arjuna. Krishna was by the side of Arjuna for the whole battle. Yes or no? That's the relationship between Guru and Shishya. It's not that Guru comes and tells you and then he walks away. Then how do you measure, am I going in the right direction or not? That is done by the means of continuous assessment. So it's not that this knowledge cannot be applied independently. It has to be in relationship with some teacher who guides us, evaluates our progress and keep realigning us in the right direction. Not that if I just do it, if I act detached, it's not going to work like that. It doesn't work like that. Detached. Detached from what? We have to be attached to something. If you say detached from result, you can only be detached from results when you are attached to following the instructions. When you are attached to pleasing that person, then it's only yajna, right? Then only you can be detached. How can you be detached without being attached to someone who you're trying to serve? Correct? That's how it works. Yes.
Good evening, sir. I have two questions. So, as you said, the food should be offered to Krishna first. But instead of means, if you offer to some needy people or animal, is it also fine? Because we are doing a kind of sacrifice only. So, is it wrong or something?
See, any of these things that we do has to be under purview of some knowledge.
Okay.
You know, is it because I feel that some needy should be taken care, or is it something which is a part of knowledge which is given somewhere? So the act of feeding needy is nothing wrong.
Okay.
ISKCON runs one of the biggest Food for Life program. Even in Pune, we have a Food for Life kitchen where almost more than 12 lakh plates every day gets distributed. We are feeding the needy. But before we feed the needy, we feed them prasadam.
Okay.
We offer it to the Lord and then distribute it to the needy.
Okay.
So, is that right way or not? Then we are properly aligning ourselves with what it is said in the scriptures, isn't it?
Yeah, right. But one more doubt. Maybe it's a kind of stupid doubt from.
That's okay. Question is
Okay.
never stupid.
So if we are offering in front of Krishna means हम किसी मूर्ति या वो जो फ्रेम होती है उसके सामने रखते हैं, बट खाना ऐसे ही पड़ा होता है, फिर वो खाना वेस्ट हो जाता है ना अगर हम डेली रखेंगे तो.
Very good question. प्रेमांजना चरित भक्ति विलोचनेन संता सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति. Long story short, when it comes to Krishna, that's not exactly the right verse in that relation. But when it comes to Krishna, for you to eat, you need to have your hands put into the mouth and chew. But when it is talked about absolute truth, which is completely spiritual, there's nothing material about his existence, and then that spiritual entity can do anything from any of his senses. He doesn't have to eat the food to be actually eaten. For example, Narad Muni on one day reached Dwarka. Krishna had got married to 16,108 queens. When Narad Muni went to meet Krishna, he saw Krishna sitting in his palace and Rukmini was serving lunch to Krishna. He met Krishna and then he thought, let me go and see what's happening in another palace. He went to another palace and then he saw Krishna was playing a chess with his another wife. He was confused. He went to another palace, then he saw Krishna is doing something else. Like this, he went to multiple palaces. Whichever palace he went, he saw Krishna simultaneously present in all the palaces. Is that possible for you and I? Not possible. Which means he expanded himself 16,108 times. He was there with all. So when it talk about spiritual, you cannot put material conditions. The spiritual reality acts in altogether different paradigm, unlike that what we know of. To understand that, we need to understand, this whole aspect of what is given in the scriptures. So when it is about Krishna, when we offer him, he's just mere looking at the prasadam or the bhoga. Through his eyes, he accepts and honors it. So when we offer it for few minutes, and then we take it away. That's become prasadam.
Okay.
Now, if in case we keep it in front of the idol or a frame, then Krishna cannot take it because it's food which is lying there. Then why we have deity worship? Because after all, it is just made up of marble. What is the concept of it? But even that marble deity has been described in scriptures that Krishna accepts the form which you and I can see so that we can serve him. Therefore, in our Vedic culture, the temples had been there for centuries, decades, and thousands of years. Every now and then we come across the news in some far out area of Russia, let's say Serbia, the northern part, somewhere we found a shivling which is, 10,000 years ago. Which means the worship had been there, the deity worship had been there all the while. So Lord takes these forms to accept our service. So there is a way of accepting bhoga also, which is given. There is a complete procedure given how it has to be done, what prayers to be, mantras to be offered, what is a standard of cleanliness, and whatever we offer to Vishnu cannot be offered without tulsi dal. There is a cleanliness standard procedure, and with that we offer it. And then there is a culture of keeping it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then with the permission of the Lord, we bring it back and then distribute it to all. Can you imagine how kind is he? Imagine if he had to eat it all. Then you would have complained, सारा खा जाते हैं, मेरे लिए कुछ छोड़ते नहीं है. अब भगवान ने कहा मैं तेरे लिए सब कुछ छोड़ दूंगा, तो हमें प्रश्न ये बनता है, खाते नहीं है. All right, what's the next question?
Yeah, so last question is, as you said, focus on the work, not on the result. So that is a great thing, but what if someone is facing some situation like related to some loan or some needy, if he or she needs some money, so in that case automatically we do the work, but the second focus is on the result. So how to avoid that?
See, Krishna, when he spoke this wisdom to him, prior to that he established him that you're not the body but spiritual.
Sorry, body?
You're not the body but spiritual.
Yeah,
if you
right.
read the sequence of Krishna revealing the wisdom nuggets, first he told him you're not the body but spiritual.
Yeah.
Get established on that. And then he said continue work in this way, Nitya Dharma, Swadharma. While you're doing your occupational duty, also take up to Nitya Dharma, which means take to spiritual practice. Then when you take to spiritual practice and trying to balance your professional life, then you will understand how to balance your professional life and how to work as a sacrifice for me. So before you can understand that, how can I work and not think about the loans, which is but obvious. Prior to that, you have to prepare your consciousness by following a spiritual practice. And that is what Krishna first talks about in Nitya Dharma. Spiritual practice, Nitya Dharma, which means in relation to the Lord, what is that? Chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Even when you go to the doctor, he gives you medicine, there is a procedure for it. And if you don't follow the procedure, it doesn't work. So if you are talking about reconditioning your mind, it's going to take some time. And it's going to happen to the speed, to the degree you apply spiritual practice. So my recommendation would be for you, take to chanting of 4 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. Begin from today, sit back peacefully and chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Means total 4 times or in one round 108 times?
4 rounds. So 1 round is 108 times,
Got it.
so 4 rounds, which will take 30 minutes.
Got it.
So we would have the beads on the table, take the bead and the devotee, some volunteer would be there, they'll teach you how to chant. Take the beads and chant. And the beads will have a counter also, we have the counter here, right? So you know that 1, 2, 3, 4. Begin with that. Try it. You don't have to do it. It will just automatically happen that your mind will become cool, composed and calm. You don't have to withdraw your mind. Your mind will automatically become focused on the things that you ought to be doing, things that you have to forget.
Got it.
That's just a natural thing that happens. But if you don't do a spiritual practice, this is not going to happen. Okay?
Got it. Thank you so much, sir.
Hare Krishna. So is it correct like we should not feel pride for our actions?
We should not feel proud.
Proud for our actions.
Feeling a sense of accomplishment is okay. But cultivating a sense of arrogance, nobody is better than I, that is wrong. If your feeling of pride takes you to this level of understanding, I am the best, then it is very wrong. That's what Duryodhana thought. That's what Karna thought. Karna thought, I am the best archer. And all his life he wasted in just trying to prove I am the best archer. So therefore this whole sense of false pride is not good. So you can definitely have a sense of accomplishment that I did something. But that sense of accomplishment would not become a sense of false pride if you also acknowledge I was not the only doer. Then you remain protected. Alright? I mean, just think about it. How can anyone say that I did it? If you ever felt that I did it, when I also think all those times when despite you putting all the efforts you failed, then did you fail yourself? Think about it. Imagine if the doctor says, I am the savior of everyone's life because I decide to save life, so I save life. So has any patient ever died in a hospital? What would doctor say? Yes, people always die. So which means you chose to kill them? So if you just see that, where is the sense that I have done something? It just happens. Yes.
हमने जिस तरीके से बात की कि जैसे हमने कर्म की बात की और यज्ञ की बात की, तो जिस तरीके से हम प्राणवायु का और अपान वायु में हवन करते हैं और अपान वायु का प्राणवायु में हवन करते हैं, और उस समय हमारी जो चेतना है वो परमेश्वर में लगा के हम रखते हैं, तो उसे क्या हम यज्ञ कहेंगे या?
Correct. That's the subject matter of the 4th chapter. Krishna speaks about that subject matter there of yajna like this. So would it be called as yajna? If it is prescribed, it is called as yajna. But Krishna there in the 4th chapter, when he speaks about it, then he says the biggest yajna means sacrifice. The greatest sacrifice is a sacrifice of one's pride. And then Krishna says the greatest yajna that one can perform is tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadeshanti te jnanam gnaninas tattvadarshana, which means the greatest sacrifice one can perform is by accepting a spiritual master and following the instructions. How many of you agree giving instructions is so easy? चलते फिरते फोकट का एडवाइस देना है ना, कितना आसान है, बट एडवाइस स्वीकारना कितना मुश्किल होता है. It's very difficult. So that's the greatest sacrifice, and that's the best sacrifice Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Anything else? Yes, please.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी, थैंक यू टू ऑर्गेनाइज दिस मीट. मेरा ये क्वेश्चन है कि हम जब कोई भी कन्वर्जेशन या फिर इन जनरल बोलते हैं हरे कृष्णा, तो तब हमारे माइंड में आइडियली क्या आना चाहिए कि हम भगवान को याद कर रहे हैं या फिर ग्रैटिट्यूड, तो क्या आना चाहिए हमारे माइंड में?
हरे कृष्णा. कुछ नहीं आना चाहिए. दैट्स ऑल. प्रॉब्लम क्या है, मन को हम बहुत एंगेज करके रखते हैं. हरे कृष्णा दैट्स इट. क्या आना चाहिए? कुछ भी नहीं आना चाहिए. कोई जबरदस्ती है क्या? एक हिप्पी लेडी प्रभुपाद जी के समक्ष जाती है, कहती है स्वामी जी जब भी मैं हरे कृष्णा बोलती हूँ तो अलग अलग कलर दिखाई देने लगते हैं, तो ये अध्यात्म जगत का दर्शन है. प्रभुपाद जी ने कहा हरे कृष्णा बोलते रहो, सारे कलर चले जाएंगे. So the point, long story short, we have got so accustomed to be governed and to be lived along with our mind, we just cannot accept a reality that mind could be silent. मैं कुछ भी करूंगा तो माइंड को बस भागते रहना है. से हरे कृष्णा, इसमें माइंड का काम ही क्या है? Now when you are in advanced stages of your spiritual practice, the moment you say Hare Krishna, immediately in your mind the memories, the remembrance of Shri Radha and Krishna would flush or flood your mind. But before that happens, at least our mind should not get flooded with the desires of sense gratification. So chant Hare Krishna, all the thoughts of desires, material desires would get flushed out. First is that. When that gets flushed out, then there is a state of silence. When you say Hare Krishna, what's there? And then we continue with the practice. Then you read and hear about Krishna. Then the stage comes when you say Hare Krishna, then your consciousness gets flooded with remembrance of Shri Radha and Krishna.